Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're totally bypassing those surface level symptoms of hustle culture. You know, the stuff we see every day. Instead, we're going to dig deep into the hidden, underlying psychological drivers that are quite literally pushing us into toxic productivity. We live in a world that completely glorifies the grind, right? But we really need to unpack the actual science and psychology behind why we feel this relentless compulsion to constantly work, and honestly, what it's really doing to our minds and bodies.
So let's jump right in with this incredibly provocative quote from Reddit co-founder Alexis Ohanian. He recognized firsthand that this performative rise and grind mentality is just dangerously toxic. Grinding every single hour of every day, it's not a badge of honor. No way. As Ohanian pointing out, it's often just a smokescreen masking systemic workplace issues and, frankly, profound oppression. For years, we've been sold this bizarre idea that suffering somehow equals success, but the reality is actually much darker.
This brilliantly captures the daily, exhausting reality for so many professionals right now. It's like physically pushing back against this chaotic, tangled web of unending tasks, Slack messages, and relentless demands. We're spending immense amounts of energy just to survive the workday, literally just holding back the chaos rather than actually creating, innovating, or doing the deep work we were hired to do. To really understand how we ended up here, we have to look at what's called the cult of busyness. We're living in a culture that socially and financially rewards extreme overworking. Being constantly slammed has somehow become this twisted sort of status symbol. But it's also fueled by what experts call passive inspiration syndrome. This is when we just consume endless streams of motivational content as a substitute for putting actual effort toward meaningful goals. You get this quick, temporary emotional high from a quote, but absolutely no real change happens. And you might be wondering, why do so many of us eventually just roll our eyes at all that hustle culture stuff? Well, analytically oriented people see right through those generic motivational platitudes. We reject this toxic positivity because of total overexposure on social media, the sheer superficiality that ignores the complex realities of life, and, let's be honest, the blatant hypocrisy of leaders who post these quotes while simultaneously fostering terrible work environments. When you have abundant inspiration but zero execution, it breeds justified cynicism, not motivation. Diving below the surface, let's look inside the workaholic mind. To truly understand the mechanics of all this, we have to peel back the performative hashtags and explore the actual clinical psychology at play here. Why on earth do people willingly subject themselves to this level of exhaustion, even when they fully know it's destroying them? Well, the absolutely crucial point here is that we aren't just talking about being a hard worker who really wants that next promotion. We are talking about a genuine clinical compulsion. In fact, in the medical dictionary, there's a specific term for this, ergomania. It's defined as an excessive devotion to work, specifically as a symptom of mental illness. We're talking about individuals who literally cannot limit their work despite facing severe, undeniable negative consequences to their personal relationships and physical health. If you dig into the psychological research, you find that workaholics are pushed by these profound, deeply rooted internal drivers. It's so often driven by chronic anxiety and low self-esteem. People essentially use constant busyness as a shield. I mean, ask yourself, if you're always working, are you maybe avoiding confronting intimacy problems or emotional voids in your personal life? When someone ties their self-worth strictly to their output, any drop in productivity feels like a complete personal failure. And this is almost always coupled with high scores in personality traits like neuroticism and intense perfectionism. Clinical psychologist Brian E. Robinson actually takes this a step further, and this is where it gets super interesting. He shows us that workaholism isn't just one single behavior. It manifests across these very different axes of starting and finishing tasks. On one side, you have the savoring and attention deficit types. These are folks who initiate work constantly, but really struggle to complete it, which often masks deep procrastination. But then on the flip side, you have the bulimic and relentless types. They have really high completion rates, but they work in these extreme, erratic binges, or at a constant, totally exhausting pace. The breaking point, the toll of toxic productivity. This relentless internal pressure to perform eventually collides head-on with human biological limits. You simply cannot out-hustle your own physiology, no matter how hard you try. And when those psychological drivers push you past those physical limits, it leads to devastating physical and emotional consequences. To put the absurdity of this modern grind into perspective, just think about this staggering statistic. 57%. Office workers spend 57% of their day just on emails, meetings, and communications. That leaves almost no time for actual focused work. We are completely trapped in what researchers call an efficiency trap. We're incredibly busy doing administrative tasks, but we're completely failing to ask if we should even be doing those tasks in the first place. And the physical toll of ignoring our limits, it can literally be fatal. This number, 72, represents the deeply tragic case of a London bank intern who died after working 72 hours straight. It is a grim, sobering reminder of the phenomenon known in Japan as karoshi, or death by overwork. When hustle culture becomes the baseline expectation, the human body eventually just gives out. So psychologists suggest this brilliant framework for managing this. Treat your mental energy exactly like a bank account. Rest and reflection, that provides vital income to your account. Conversely, ignoring your exhaustion to constantly push for perfection is a massive, completely unsustainable expense. If you keep making hefty withdrawals without depositing any rest, you are absolutely going to go bankrupt, both mentally and physically. And when that mental account runs completely dry, that's when you hit burnout. The World Health Organization actually officially recognizes this as an occupational syndrome now, and it follows this very specific, predictable downward spiral. It starts with prolonged stress and fatigue, which then drops your motivation. That fatigue metastasizes into growing cynicism and total emotional detachment from your job, which ultimately results in the exact thing you were desperately trying to avoid in the first place: poor job performance. Finding permission to pause. Knowing all of this, how do we actually escape this efficiency trap? How do we rewire those deep psychological drivers constantly screaming at us that we must always be producing? Well, the very first step is intentionally finding and actually taking the permission to pause. We fundamentally have to stop accepting work environments that are pathologically busy. It's so exhausting to feel overwhelmed every single day. One research participant perfectly described their team meetings as being like drinking from a fire hydrant. We've somehow normalized this state of constant reactive speed. But think about it. We cannot do our best thinking or our best living when we're merely bracing against a high-pressure blast of information all day long. The psychological antidote to all of this is a massive mindset shift. We have to actively move out of this rigid doing mode, where we view ourselves merely as instruments of constant output, or we're just thingifying the world and viewing any form of rest as laziness. Instead, we need to cultivate a being mode. This means embracing what researchers beautifully call spaciousness, being reflective, managing our attention wisely, setting firm boundaries, and prioritizing recovery over endless reactivity. Reclaiming your mental health and your life requires active, deliberate steps. You have to redefine success so that it actually includes your health and your relationships, not just your output. You absolutely must set non-negotiable boundaries. Start treating rest as a basic human biological need, not some special reward you earn only after hard work. Practice self-compassion when you have a slow day. And finally, if your workaholism feels deeply entrenched, seek professional therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy to address those underlying thought patterns driving the toxic productivity. Remember, your fundamental self-worth is rooted in who you are, not just what you produce. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this final thought. Take a moment to honestly reflect on your own relationship with productivity. Are you trapped in the hustle, pushing the rock up the hill every single day like Sisyphus, just to watch it roll right back down? Or are you finally ready to reclaim your mental energy and give yourself the permission to pause? Take that question with you today.